Welcome everyone to this new peek at the future. Today we're going to look at the new anti-materiel rifle that's currently up on PTS, and also a look at the new Conquest mode. Those of you who are wondering if I'm covering the LMGs, I'm not, but I'll have a quick discussion about it at the end. So there you can see the new NS anti-materiel rifle. Styled like many of the current NS guns. This is for the engineer class only, and is in as a primary weapon, which, as we're about to look at, may make it a bit of a tough sell for some engineers. So, even at point blank range, and you can see how slow this fires, that is a 2-shot kill on infantry. As far as body shots go, it's going to be really tough to go against infantry with this. It's just so slow. But if you were to argue, just a sec, it's not about that, it's about anti-materiel, well then, obviously, yeah, you're right. But as an engineer, you're going to have to weigh up how often you're going to meet armour, and what type of armour, to decide whether or not it's worth it for you. But here we are against a VS Max, and this is headshots from close up. Yeah, that's right, that is a 2-shot kill on a Max. You may be going to argue, just a sec, I've never seen many stationary VS Maxes. Well, that's also a valid point. But even body shots, that is a 3-shot kill on a Max on body shots. So if someone shouts they're getting a Max crash ready, 3 or 4 guys with these, that's going to be fairly terrifying. So here we go, what's it like against an ESF? Well, you can see, 2 magazines worth, that's probably, what, say 5-7 shots? Again, how often is it that easy to hit an ESF? Fair enough. But if you're on a hill sniping at tanks with these things, or, well, not really tanks, but if you're sniping at Maxes with these things, if you hit an ESF with one, they're going to know about it. You are going to get their attention. But here we go again. Slightly longer range this time, against an NC Max. That is a 3-shot kill. So it kind of fluctuates from feeling like it's overpowered in some cases, like against Maxes it's certainly really powerful. And then you'll hit what you imagine to be a light vehicle, like harassers aren't heavily armoured, and it doesn't do quite the amount of damage that perhaps you thought it was about to. Also, while I'm being negative, I hope that the sound's going to change. It doesn't feel like it's got much sort of bass or kind of guts to it. But here we go, I'm back in. This time I'm putting the straight pull bolt on, and also the 12-time sight as well. Well, as with all these things, the design is obviously subjective. The scope looks quite cool, I'd say. The design of the rifle itself, I don't know. It feels like it could have been a bit more special, perhaps. Especially with that recent work that was done on the Maxes. Their weapons were changed. There's a lot more intricacy and stuff going on in the animation and so on. It's a shame not to see that in this brand new model. But here we are. That is a Galaxy at quite long range. Yes, it was almost down to no health. But shots from this really do hurt it. So like I was saying, it goes from feeling perhaps underpowered to overpowered, and then again you've got to bear in mind, this is Planetside. It's not necessarily about how often one of these guns goes up against a Galaxy, because you don't 1v1 Galaxies. This is about how this is going to scale. I can see a organised outfit thinking, you know what, if we turn a squad into just with these, and take pot shots at people in harassers, people in Max suits, even some Galaxies, you are seriously going to damage those vehicles. Up against a full health Galaxy. That's 2 magazines gone in. I'd say that's roughly about a third health has been taken off it. So that's like 33% damage from 2 magazines. So that's the equivalent of 2 people firing, say, at the same time. A full magazine and obviously landing all their shots. If you can get 12 guys doing that, you're going to tear through that thing. Obviously the softest area, shall we say, of a Vanguard. And that's a single magazine. Again, I'd say that's about a third. So these are damaging, heavily armoured vehicles as well. Valkyries obviously aren't made out of cardboard anymore. It's more kind of reinforced cardboard they're using now. So things are, it's a little bit better. But one magazine has taken it well under 50% health. So that's two people firing, hitting all their shots is going to tear through a Valkyrie. So it's certainly a nice addition to the game. Feels like we've needed something like this for a while. But I do wonder if it should be the engineer's primary weapon. Should the engineer have to give up their ability to defend themselves against other infantry to use this? I'm not saying it's not capable of killing infantry, clearly it is. But it's essentially a bolt-action rifle. I would wonder, could it replace an engineer's turret instead? You lose your infantry turret, you lose your anti-vehicle turret, but you gain this anti-vehicle gun. Maybe even force engineers to stop and crouch when firing this weapon? Maybe even tailor this gun to feeling like it's really a heavyweight piece of kit. Give that audio like a real thump, make it sound like a real big cannon's going off, and then force engineers not to be able to move while firing, and then also force them maybe even to crouch at the same time. So if you see an enemy max, you switch to this gun, you stop, you crouch, you aim, and then you fire, and then it feels like a real mode that you're going into. So, welcome to Conquest, the new mode in Planetside 2. And if you read Reddit, this is going to end the world. Well, not quite, but, it's Reddit. So for those people who have played the game for a while, this current mode feels a little bit like the old WDS World Domination Series system. You get points for attacking and, most importantly, defending bases. It's 150 for small bases, 300 for large bases, so that's like towers, think indirects, something like that, and 750 for facilities, that's amps, bios, stuff on the lattice. So the actual capture mechanics are kind of like the lattice that we all know now, and kind of like the old hex system that we had before the lattice was here. You can capture bases along the lattice, though those are all of the larger facilities now, and you can capture other bases when they're adjacent to them. So you can capture them in a more sort of hex system. The scoring system is, like many people pointed out on PTS, and in the Planetside Battles stream itself, flawed for all the same reasons that the WDS series was. It's inherently biased towards defenders, so that staying at one large base and farming it by letting an opposing faction take one of the points, and then you take it back, thus earning you all the defense points for that base, becomes the number one tactic. In fact, as Steve-O from BRTD pointed out, it can actually seek to undermine player interaction as well, where if a novice player goes off and flips a point on a large base, then your opponents have the opportunity to come back and flip that back. That earns the opposing side a massive number of points, and then, people who don't know any better get shouted at for just doing what they thought was the right thing, everyone pizzas when they should have french fried, everyone has a bad time. The general feeling seemed to be that changing the whole scoring system would be beneficial. I think I'm not stretching things by saying that most people seem to back a plan where every set period, say 5 minutes, each base that an empire owns earns them a set number of points. So there's like a constant tick in the background, and every time that tick hits, all the bases that you own then earn you points. That way, all sides are forced to attack and gain new ground while defending lucrative bases from capture. The spawn changes are perhaps even more interesting. The removal of the redeploy option, but at this stage not the /suicide option, though I believe that will be removed, linked with the limited spawn options, suddenly means that logistics are important, and it's something of a shock. In fact, it felt like there were some inconsistencies to the spawn options. I was never quite 100% sure where I could and couldn't spawn. Major facilities sometimes, but then I could spawn at adjacent bases that were under attack as well, and then maybe I could even spawn at the base I was at, but I could spawn at a sunderer that was far away. it all seemed a little bit strange. But either way, redeploy side is certainly being tempered in this mode, and it certainly makes the game feel different, and if I'm honest, a bit more interesting. The lack of redeploy option certainly does make things interesting, though many people seem to be using the /suicide option, which initially seems like a cop-out. Though after talking about it with people in TeamSpeak, it soon seemed like the idea of stopping people from redeploying was actually itself kind of misplaced. People talked of simple things like filling galaxies taking a while because people were spread over a base. But even worse was things like, if you're in an aircraft that gets shot down and you don't die, what do you do? I mean, you're in the hills somewhere. You can't redeploy, you can't /suicide. Are you to run to the next base? I'm pretty sure that turns into the Planetside version of H1Z1 at that point. Actually, note to self, game idea, Planetside with bears. So maybe limiting the spawn options is the way to control redeploy side, not the options of redeploying itself. All this time we've been angry at redeploy side, but that's not been the issue, it's spawn side that's the issue. One final part of the test that seemed important to many people was the fact that many of these ideas should just be part of the main game, and also that the community never really asked for a sort of side game mode like this. It's hard to argue with either of those statements, to be honest. Though after talking with Radar X about the reasons for that instancing system, initially I thought it was unwise. Why not just make all of this an alert type? He said it was basically a technical issue, where making an instance like this was in effect like a bubble, where they can actually make changes to the game that don't affect the rest of the live system. And to be honest, the experience of moving from the normal PTS continent to a instance of the Conquest alert was just like moving continent itself, and that brought another point. This essentially feels like another continent. It's just like another version of Indar. And as such, server population will be spread across another area, so management of those other continents needs to be taken into consideration. Maybe when there's a Conquest instance running, one of the other zones should be locked as well if populations run low. I think that kind of thing needs to be really watched quite carefully. We don't want the player base being spread over a larger and larger area. So at the start I wanted a quick discussion about the new LMG changes. And the reason why I've not covered them here is because, well, the thread on Reddit, it got so much, well, let's say, opinion, that it looks like some of that stuff's going to change, or certainly be subject to change, before anything really starts to be boiled down. Also, a lot of those changes are just numbers, you know yourselves what that means. So showing that on here, I don't know, do people think that's beneficial? If you do think that's beneficial, why not let me know in the comments below? I'd be interested to know your opinion. So, thank you very much for watching this new peek at the future. I appreciate you watching as always. If you really enjoyed it, why not think about hitting that subscribe button? If you're already a subscriber, thank you very much. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm @LCTRGames, and I'll see you next time. Take care.